Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Rich Szerman. You've reached the Real Estate Fix on KHTS, AM 1220, FM 98.1. Thank you guys for listening today. I appreciate it. Going to have all kinds of fun stuff today. We're going to do one of my favorite segments. We're going to do the Ask the Attorney. Probably because I think the attorney's cute, but we're going to do Ask the Attorney. Say the attorney's my wife, just so if you guys are curious. We're going to do Ask the Attorney because there's a slew of new laws in California that are affecting real estate this year. A bunch of things that came out. One in particular is going to change the landscape of real estate somewhat dramatically. Well, I guess you could say two, maybe. But anyway, we're going to talk about that with Jane when she's after the break here. She's going to come in. We're going to spend the rest of the show talking about that. But first, we're going to talk, as always, about the real estate market and kind of where we're at and what's going on. And I'm going to give you, rather than going through the numbers and giving you the conclusion, I think we're going to do a little different today. I'm going to give you the conclusion and go through and show you the receipts, because I'm rarely wrong about this stuff, because real estate is not that hard to figure out which way the wind is blowing, and things go kind of, real estate, unlike the stock market changes from second to second. Real estate, especially residential, it doesn't change from second to second. At most, it'll change from week to week. Usually it's month to month or quarter to quarter, year to year. So it's a little bit easier. It's sort of like a train coming down a track rather than a car going down the freeway, as far as the economics of it. So it's easy to figure out what's going on. So here's the deal. Right now, prices are starting to soften. To put it the way my friends who are economists put it, there is downward pressure on real estate sales prices. So prices are starting to fall. They just are. I've been talking about this for months. I told you guys, those who listened, that this was coming, and we're here now, and it's only going to get, well, depending on your point of view, better or worse from here. If you're a buyer, it's getting better. If you're a seller, it's getting worse, because what's going on is basically prices are beginning to fall. They're not falling precipitously. It's not 2008. Prices aren't going to tumble 50% over the course of 12 months or anything crazy like that, but they are going to come down a couple percentage points. They just are. I figure by the end of the year, somewhere between 3 to 5% off of where we're now, maybe more. Now, if the interest rate goes down, that'll change. Everything right now is interest rate related, because the interest rate and the prices are extremely high. There's something called the affordability index. What can people afford? And right now, in order to buy an average 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single-family home in Southern California, you have to be making about $250,000 a year to qualify and be able to afford the mortgage payment. And that's because interest rate's high. At an interest rate of 7%, or just under, which is where we're at right now, just 6.9 and change for most folks, your payment is going to be very, very high. And the bottom line is, if the interest rate gets down to 6% by the end of the year, 5.5% in 2026, we'll be able to return to some kind of normalcy in the real estate market. But as long as that interest rate remains over 6.5%, it's going to be a frozen real estate market. That's just what it is. When I say frozen, I mean there are fewer houses being sold. There are fewer houses on the market, and there are fewer houses being sold. Now, the good news is there are more houses coming to market, which is a good thing. But that interest rate is still high. It went down a little bit in September, and we had a really good fourth quarter. Things started to move. And then the interest rate went up again, and now we're back to being frozen out again. So prices are starting to come down, and they're going to keep coming down. And I'm going to show you why in just a minute. We'll go through this right now. Okay, so here's the market snapshot for January. This is just kind of we just got the January numbers, obviously. And for the Santa Clarita Valley, the median sales price is down $27,000 to $790,000. And that's everything: single-family homes, townhomes, condos, etc. Now, when you break that out, single-family homes, the average sales price is down to $825,000, when his last month it was $880,000. So that's $55,000 down. The median sales price for condos and townhomes is $585,000, whereas last month it was $615,000. So that's a correction of $30,000 on average. I mean, these are just the averages over 1 month. And the previous month was December, so it's not maybe the best meter to take, but my point is prices are coming down. New listings. We have 291 new listings in the Santa Clarita Valley in January. That's up 139 from December. That number should be much higher. Coming out of the holidays, we should have 200-300 more listings than that, new listings coming into January, so not as many as we need. Active listings, there are a total of 583. That's only 90 more than we had in December. Again, that number should be higher. Pending sales, only 122, only 17 more than December. Now, given that December is usually one of the lowest months on the calendar as far as how many properties get sold, not the amount they're selling for, but the volume, how many are being sold, seeing that number's only gone up 17 units in January is very, very telling. And closed sales, there are 144, which is down 53 from December. So more escrows closed in December than closed in January. That's weird. It doesn't usually do that. Markets don't usually do that. So that's Santa Clarita as far as the numbers are concerned. Let's talk about another meter. So those are the numbers. The numbers are down. They're only pointing in that direction. If you're a realtor and you can hear me, you know this as well as anybody. When you have a client that's looking for a house and you pull up an MLS list, or if you're running comparables for a house you're looking to list and you pull up the MLS, whenever somebody's dropped the price, there's a little red arrow that appears next to the address. And right now, I pulled up for a client recently. I think the parameters are under 600,000, at least 3 bedroom, within 25 miles. So that's everything in Santa Cruz all the way out to Piru, for goodness sake. And of those 34 listings that came into that list, 18 of them, so 52% roughly, had lowered their price. So more than half of the market in that search had lowered their price. Now you'll find in the higher numbers, the $1 million houses, $2 million, $3 million houses, you'll see even more of that. Now that we haven't really had the numbers from the fires and the disasters, that hasn't really been computed yet, but that's where we're at. The prices are starting to adjust. They just are. And if you're looking to sell a house, as I've been saying for months, it better be a deal, because if it's not going to sell. That doesn't mean you have to drop the price crazy. You have to go nuts, but you have to get, when a market is going up, you can get ahead of it and the market will come to you. When the market is going down, you have to get ahead of it so it doesn't get away from you. Otherwise, you wind up just chasing the market to the bottom, and buyers see that and they act like, buyers can smell blood in the water just like sharks. So you got to be careful with how you handle that. Anyway, so here's another meter that we should pay attention to. Where are we? Oh, yeah. Homeowners, particularly first-time buyers, VA, FHA buyers, the number of foreclosures, or I should say not foreclosures, the number of people who are late on their payments, meaning they're at least 90 days late, is starting to skyrocket. 2024, the share of serious delinquencies, which refers to mortgage loans that are over 90 days past due and are not in foreclosure yet, but about to be, rose to the highest level in the last 2 years, according to a group called the Intercontinental Exchange, ICE. We see them all the time. Delinquencies on FHA loans in particular rose 2.5 percentage points higher than they were prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. 2.9% doesn't sound like a lot, 2.5%, excuse me, doesn't sound like a lot, but in the world of real estate, 2.5% nationwide, that is a lot of houses. That is a great big number. FHA is the way most first-time buyers go. It's 3.5% down and it's easier to qualify for. So these are a little bit, and they'll allow higher back-end ratios, meaning you don't have to be quite as strong economically to qualify for the loan with FHA. And they're the first ones to go. They're the canary in the coal mine, FHA and VA. And what I'm telling you is the number of FHA delinquencies that are about to be foreclosures and the number of VA delinquencies that are about to become foreclosures is going up. It's skyrocketing. Overall, about 2.2 million mortgages are either delinquent or in active foreclosure as of the end of 2024. That's a lot, 2.2 million across the country. So the big question is why? Why are some homeowners missing their mortgage payments? Well, I can answer that. It's a series of things. It's inflationary pressures. The cost of milk and eggs is still through the ceiling, and as a result, that's hurting people. Lower personnel have less money in savings than they have had in the last 10 years. That's a terrifying statistic. Again, it's just all tells you the same thing. Another reason is natural disasters, as we've just been visited in our area. Well, actually, I shouldn't say our area. Our immediate area, we got really lucky. But in the Palisades and the other areas down south of us that got hit so hard. Increasing consumer debt. The debt load in most houses is at a record numbers in 2024 as well. Higher taxes and much, much higher insurance rates. And that was before the fires. So we got all kinds of trouble with insurance. We've done shows on that before and we'll do again. Most people I know, their insurance is doubling, if not tripling. And you got to keep it because the only option is you go to California Fair Plan, which is even more expensive for less coverage. It's the insurance conundrum. We'll do a show on that as well. We'll do another one to follow up on that maybe next month. But it's a massive problem. And of course, higher income to debt ratios. I mean, people are it is costing more to live here than it has ever cost before, and people's wages are not keeping up with it. That's what's putting us in this position. Household debt, this is what I was talking about. Household debt hit a new record high in 2024, according to the New York Fed, released in the third quarter. Record high, the most we have ever owed as a people, as a group, we are now in right now. So you couple all kinds of debt with not enough income and incredibly high inflation on everything else, that's a recipe for foreclosures, and that's what we're starting to see. And when that happens, foreclosures sell for less than regular properties. They are going to affect the market. All of these indicators are pointing in the same direction. Prices are coming down. The states with the highest quarterly increases in delinquency, luckily aren't us yet. They're mostly in the South. They're concentrated in 5 states: Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Louisiana. They're the ones seeing the steepest price declines. They're also the ones who are seeing the most amount of bad debt going to foreclosure. So that's why it's one of the reasons that prices are going to start going down, or they already have. They're going to continue that downward slide, I think, through the rest of the year, unless or until the interest rate gets below or to or below 6.5%. As long as the interest rate remains above that, prices are going to continue to slide overall. And I'm talking nationwide here. Now, if you are selling your house at the moment, and I've had a bit of a tough week with a couple of my clients over this, homes on the market are just taking longer to sell. for all of these same reasons. Because unless your house is a deal of some sort, maybe yours is the only one with a remodeled kitchen, or yours is the only one with a view, or yours is the only one with this or with that, unless your house is a deal, or price, of course, it's not going to sell. It's going to sit on the market. Houses on the market are slowing at homes on the market are selling at the slowest pace in the last 5 years. It's taking longer now to sell a house than even during the middle of the pandemic, when you had to wear a mask and go through all that crazy stuff just to go look at a house. Slowest pace in 5 years. Even though more sellers are coming to the market because inventory is increasing, another reason prices are coming down, supply and demand. Even if demand remains constant, if you increase supply, prices go down. And there are more houses coming to market. The number of homes on the market nationwide in January rose by 11% compared to the same period last year, according to Realtor.com. The median price for homes in the United States right now is $400,500, about half what you're going to pay here. But yeah, 11% more properties on the market. So we have more inventory, we have more people going into foreclosure, and we have interest rates that are still too high and things are still too unaffordable. That is a recipe for a price correction. Wait, there's more. Buyers were really not interested in these homes. Most homes, this is nationwide, spent 73 days on the market, which is the slowest pace in the month of January since 2020, according to Realtor.com. Now, I can tell you the numbers here in Santa Clarita. The average time on market going into the fourth quarter was 67 days, 68 days, depending on who you talk to. So, right, just over 2 months. The average time now, and these are for houses that haven't even sold yet. These are houses that are still on the market, so it's going to go up, is about 130 days. And that number is going to keep going higher. Because again, these are houses that haven't even sold yet in some cases. Anyway, mortgage markets remain elevated throughout January, which has sapped the energy out of the housing market. Again, we had interest rates went down a little in September. We had a good fourth quarter. Houses were starting to move again. Interest rate back up, frozen over again. Mortgage rates haven't changed much from a year ago. The 30-year savings years ago was 6.63. And with all due respect to this article from Market Watch that I'm quoting from, saying 6.63 is the same as 7% is just ignorant. It might be that if you're only buying a house for $200,000, but when you're talking about buying a house for $900,000 or $1 million, or the average in area about $800, $850 right now for a single family home, that nearly half a percentage point is huge. It's a massive difference, about $200 to $300 a month. For most people's mortgages. But anyway, homes that are for sale on the market are selling at the slowest pace in the last 5 years, according to analysis from real estate platform Realtor.com and brokerage Redfin. They're both in agreement. Sales have slowed and buyers have backed away from the market. Mortgage rates are the biggest driver of home sales. They are the absolute single biggest driver of home sales. When rates rose at the end of 2024, which again, it went down in September, but by December they were back up, buyers pulled back. Pending home sales, which refer to the number of contracts signed to purchase a home, fell 5.5% in December. That's, again, nationwide. 5.5% fewer homes sold in December than November nationwide. That is a big, big number. That's the first drop in 5 months, according to the data from the National Association of Realtors. So, yeah, houses are taking longer to sell. We got foreclosures that are starting to pile up. We're just going to hit with a wave of, it's not going to be a huge wave. We're going to hit with more and more foreclosures as time goes on. And the interest rate is still too darn high. And let's talk about the interest rate, because the interest rate is what's driving everything right now. Interest rate is what's affecting affordability. Inflation is part of it, but what you pay for eggs, while it definitely affects what you pay for a house, there's not exactly one-to-one correlation there. What your interest rate is, what your mortgage payment will be, there's absolutely a one-to-one correlation for. Looking over the past 4 decades, the average rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage peaked in 1981 at just above 16%. But that was 1981. We had savings and loans then. There was it was not the same real estate landscape. It wasn't even remotely similar. But the peak was 16%, so try to remember that. The average 30-year fix bottomed out in 2021 at just under 3%, which is what's caused the lock-in effect. Again, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae tell us that better than 70% of people in the United States right now that have a mortgage, more than 70%, have a rate that is sub 4, meaning under 4%. So if you have an interest rate that is under 4%, you are not going to sell your house and buy another one if you have a choice and go up to an interest rate of 7%. Because the difference between a 4% interest rate and a 7% interest rate is darn near triple your payment. I mean, people think that interest rates work exponentially. So the difference isn't just double, the difference is almost triple. So I don't know about too many people who are going to sell house A, no matter how much profit they get out of it, and buy house B and then have their payments nearly triple. So people are staying put. That's one of the reasons we're not seeing as much stuff come to market. But we are starting to see some stuff. It is getting better than it was last year as far as the amount of houses available. From the start of 2025, the typical 30-year mortgage rate has been just above or just at 7%. We just got a little hair below that. This morning I checked, we're at 6.96 on average. which is still close enough to 7. Anyway, current mortgage rates have increased in recent months, even as the Federal Reserve cut rates 3 times in 2024. They said they were going to cut it 6 times at the beginning of the year. They only wound up cutting it 3. And the Fed has a lot to do with the interest rate overall, and there is a correlation between what the Fed does and the overall interest rate, but they don't control it. When the Fed cuts their interest rate, usually the market will follow, but there are other market factors, as happened not this month, but 2 months ago, where the Fed can cut the rate and the interest rate will still go up. So that is what happened. So anyway, the rise corresponds to the rise in Treasury bond yields due largely to stubborn inflation and uncertain economic outlook with the new administration. Yeah, that hasn't helped either. However you feel about the current administration, and I'm not really going to get into what I like or don't like personally. If you want to have that conversation, you call me. We'll talk about it off the air. But it doesn't matter because it is what it is. You know, you like the storm, don't like the storm, but it's going to rain. And the problem that I have as far as real estate is concerned with the current administration is nobody knows what the heck they're going to do. They say one thing on Monday, they say something else on Tuesday. It's a lot of stuff they say they don't do. A lot of stuff they don't say they do. It's very, very difficult to chart policy in this kind of chaos. And the chaos is clearly the point because it's only going to get crazier. So I hope I'm wrong about that. I truly do. But all evidence to the contrary so far. So far, the trend for mortgages in 2020. By 2022, the Federal Reserve began raising its benchmark interest rate to cool pandemic-spurred inflation, or to cool inflation, I should say, during the pandemic, and mortgage rates followed suit. Fast forward to October of 2023, and the 30-year mortgage rate broke through 8%. Just to remind you guys, it was above 8%. Which was an average not seen since 200,000. Whenever you hear anything with the Fed and it says unprecedented after it in any newspaper headline, or any, I should say, internet headline, be afraid. Be very, very afraid. Because you don't want things that are unprecedented in your economic leaders, in your economic circumstance. That is bad. Unprecedented wealth, I suppose, would be fun. But most of the time, what you're going to hear, all the time, what you're going to hear when you see the word unprecedented is a bad thing. Like unprecedented rise in interest rates, which is what we saw at the beginning of this year. That also hasn't happened in the market. So, that's the scoop, guys. Prices are starting to fall on houses. They haven't really hit anything yet, and it's not really starting to show yet, but it is. People are reducing prices on average. Right now, what the market is doing is beginning to acknowledge that prices are no longer going up. I'm here to tell you they're going to start going down. And if you are wise, you will get ahead of this trend. So what I would say is if you are a seller, and let's say you listed your house for $700,000, something like that, and you haven't sold your house yet, it's been on the market for more than 90 days, you need to seriously consider dropping that price. Because if you don't, it's not going to sell in the next 90 days. And if it does, it's sold because you got lucky, not because you had a plan or because you were smart. And luck is not a business plan. Certainly not. And it's just not. So you're hoping for that. So what I would tell everybody is if you're a seller, get that price. Find out what your bottom line is. And if you can't meet that, and I mean your absolute, this is what the minimum we're willing to sell for, and get to that. And if you can't, then plan on keeping the house. I don't plan on keeping the house for at least the next 2 to 3 years because it's going to take a while. We're not going to reach any kind of normalcy until the interest rate gets down around 5.5%. I've been saying that for years. I don't think we're going to get below 6% by the end of 2025. If we're real lucky, we'll get to 6.5%. And hopefully that'll happen soon. Because we get to 6 3/4, quarter point drop, we'll start to get some more activity in the market. If we get to 6.5%, it'll improve even further. But we're not going to reach any kind of normalcy, any sort of parity until we get 5.5%. So that's what we're looking at. So if you're a seller, choppy waters ahead. If you're a buyer, take your time. Get yourself pre-qualified, get your ducks in a row, start looking at houses, be ready, but don't be in a hurry. Because the more time that goes by, if you're a buyer, the more options you're going to have, the more properties are going to come to market, and if we're really, really lucky, the interest rate will go down a little bit. So again, if you're a buyer, take it easy. Don't rush unless you have to, unless your life dictates it. Interest rates are going to start to go down, and you're going to have more options as time goes on. If you're a seller, you get to that bottom line as quick as you can. Otherwise, you're going to be regretting it a year from now. So, okay, so we're going to go to a break. We're going to hear from some of the advertisers. We love hearing from them, so please take a listen. And when we come back, I think it'll be more fun because Jane's going to come in here, and she's prettier and smarter than I am, so that'll be fun to have her in. And we'll ask her all sorts of questions about new laws and current laws. I got a bunch of questions from you guys we're going to ask her. Some of which are pretty funny, so we'll have some fun with that. So please listen through the break. I'm your host, Rich Szerman. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix on KHTS, FM 98.1, AM 1220, your hometown station. Thank you guys. Listen to the break. Hey everybody, thank you and welcome back. You're listening to The Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman, on KHTS, FM 98.1, AM 1220, your hometown station. And thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening through the break. If you missed the first part of the show, it was all about market wrap-up stuff, and the bottom line is prices are starting to go down for houses. If you're a buyer, hang tight. You got other options out there. Get yourself ready so you're ready for the right one, but don't rush. If you're a seller, you get to that bottom line as quickly as you can. You list the house for that, and you hope you get it sold because it's only going to be weaker later. So if you got a house to sell, Make it a deal, otherwise it's not going to sell. So let's move on to the more fun part of the show, part I've been waiting for anyway. My lovely wife, Jane Szerman, is joining us today. She is an attorney. She's been an attorney for a while. I don't want to say how long because she gets mad at me, because then you can figure out her age. I will simply tell all of you listening she is older than I am, and we'll just live with that. Okay, so we got a lot of questions for Janet. You guys have sent in a lot of really good questions. We've gotten a lot of questions, had some from staff as well this week, which is good. So thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate all of you who sent me emails and stuff. By the way, if you do want to reach me, you can always reach me on my cell phone, 661-714-1400. That is my personal cell phone number. I will not give out your cell phone number because that would not be okay. But you can certainly call. If you want to talk to Jane, you can always leave me a message. I will pass it along. But you can call me at that number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I do not answer, please text. You can also send me emails. I love it when people send me emails. My email address is richszerman@gmail.com. RICHSZ, because in my family the Z has the sound of an H, Russian ancestry they tell me, at RICHSZERMAN@gmail.com. You can also find me through the station as well if you have any questions. So you want to get right into it?
Sure.
You ready to go?
Sure.
Okay. What has the this is my no particular order of these. What has the NAR settlement of 2000? How has the NAR settlement of 2024 changed real estate? Which is a very, very large question. So maybe you want to take up a chunk of that one.
That's a little broad, yeah. So I would say, first of all, some of the issues that it addressed was just basic transparency in the transaction and full disclosure to all sides on what was going on, which California has always been ahead of. It's really been it's done quite well on that front. Effectively, the biggest change that's come about after the settlement for us here in California is that the sellers are no longer obligated to pay for the buyer's agent's commission. So in theory, that means the buyer is paying their own agent, which is great in theory. I'm all for everybody paying their own representation. It's just not all that practical when we're talking about the prices that are here in California.
Well, I think this settlement, and I think the settlement was necessary because I think NAR was getting a little too over its skis, as it were, trying to control markets and that. So I do understand the use of settlement. But you know, like most of these sort of things, it's a good idea implemented badly. Additional transparency is a good idea. But thinking that a buyer, especially a first-time buyer, who's walking into a $600,000 or $700,000 first-time house in the Santa Clarita Valley, who's going to have to come up with $30,000, $40,000 to be able to buy a house, is then going to come up with an additional $30,000, $40,000 to pay their agent. Well, 25 anyway, to pay their agent is just not realistic. What it'll do is it'll prevent them from buying a house. So what happens these days, just to give you the mechanics of it, guys, is when you make an offer on a house, first of all, you will have signed a buyer broker contract, and there's another question about that, so we'll get to that in a second. But when you make an offer on a house, your agent, as part of that offer, is going to put into the offer a whole separate form that says, in addition to my client's offer of however much, however the deal is set up, the agent is also asking for their commission, which is somewhere between 2 and 3% in most cases. And so the seller can then counter on the commission, or they can agree to it or do whatever. But it becomes in other words, it's now become something you can counter back and forth in an offer. It becomes a term of an offer, which I think overall is a good thing. But expecting eventually for a buyer, I think the evolution that they're looking for is for buyers to hire their own attorney, hire their own agent, and pay them themselves, which I get, but it's just not practical. It's just not.
Yeah, it's really not. So I think that it's now included, like you're saying, as any other cost in a deal where it can be negotiated. That seems to be the way it's settling out, which is not a bad place for it to be, as long as sellers realistically expect to cover some of that cost for buyers.
Yeah, I mean, practically, I don't think much has changed, really. But I think there's some extra paperwork and some other stuff, because apparently we don't have enough paperwork to fill out as realtor. Because in California, God knows we don't have enough documentation for everything. But practically, it hasn't really made a big change. It really hasn't. It gives the sellers a few more options, makes it a little harder for a buyer, but not in any major way.
Yeah, I would
You still
agree.
have a buyer who wants to buy and a seller who wants to sell. You'll find a way to get it together.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the big change. It has to do with commissions and transparency. And I think it's a good thing that buyers know how much their agent's getting paid. I think it's a good thing that happens. We've always operated that way, so it's not a change for us. But I think it's a good thing. Okay, so this one again. So this is another kind of new law thing. Does everybody now need to sign a buyer brokerage agreement as a result of the new laws?
Yeah, everybody, there needs to be, if you have an agent representing you, before they show you property, they need to get a buyer broker contract signed with you so that you have all the proper disclosures that are in there. So it definitely has to be signed up front. It has to be, you have to have one, and it should be signed prior to viewing the property.
Yep. You also, that in other words, and this is, I think, that, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. I think having buyer brokerage contracts, you wrote one of the first ones ever to be used in California
Yeah,
way
we've
back
used
when,
them for
you were
decades.
still in law school, all those many years ago when dinosaurs ruled the earth and the earth was still flat. Anyway, so for us, it's not a big change. I think it's a very good idea that people use buyer brokerage contracts. However, in a colossal case of overreach, now if you walk into an open house, the agent is supposed to ask you, I mean, most aren't, but the agent is supposed to ask you, please sign here before you go look at the open. It's an open house. It's open to the public. And you're asking people to sign contracts just to view the house? I think that's overreach. I think that's I get why you're doing it. I understand the reasons for it, but it just is overreach. And the public's not going to stand for that for very long. It's just nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, from a legal standpoint, I do understand that also cuts down, presumably, on conflicting claims for commission. Arguments that one agent showed the property and another represented them in the offer. So I can see where that would help a little bit, but time will tell whether that's
But
actually going to
when you
help.
consider what goes into putting together a deal on just the buyer's side, the financing you have to help them work out, and all the stuff you have to go through, I don't think just showing somebody an open house is what we used to call procuring cause.
No, I
don't think
agree.
that's
I
enough.
agree.
You're
That's
not
what I
the
mean.
agent.
I think it's going to end up working
Yeah.
itself out.
Yeah, I think so too. I
We'll
mean,
see.
you're not the agent, and frankly, you shouldn't be making people make you the agent just because they walked into an open house.
Yeah.
Get their name and phone number, call them. If they want you to be their agent, you'll be their agent. If not, then you won't. So I think that's kind of silly. But regarding brokerage agreements, this might be fun. Can you name the law that changed that?
The buyer brokerage?
Yeah, not the NAR settlement, but the law that changed that.
Well, the law is different. So you've got the Assembly Bill name
Oh, I thought I
number,
had you.
which I think is 2992. Did I
Yeah,
get that one right?
Yeah, AB 2992. Yeah.
But
Well, I know because I wrote it down and I
But
cheated.
it's interesting when you go to that'll tell you the gist of the law, but what it does is then each part of it goes into separate civil code sections or civil procedure sections or other codes, health and safety, whatnot, and changes those. So it actually gets changed in a number of different places, but that's a good place to get a summary.
I thought for sure I was going to sound smarter because I knew the name of it. Well, I cheated and wrote it down, so I thought okay, well, fair enough. Once again, just proving that Jane is smarter than I am. Those of you who know me didn't have a doubt. And the big part of buyer brokerage agreements, how long buyer brokerage used to be, you could write them for however long you wanted to write them for, but now it's limited to
3 months, which I got to say, that is one of the big ones that I just fundamentally disagree with up front. I've seen how long it can take to work with buyers. Sometimes it's great. You can have a buyer look at a property or two, and then you make an offer, and off you go. But that's not always the case. For sure, it takes longer than that a lot of the time. So limiting it to 3 months, I think, is a mistake.
Well, yeah, it's a huge mistake. I've got clients right now that I've known them for the better part of 3 years. I've represented them. I got them to help them with a bankruptcy. I helped them clean up their credit. I helped them get quality, all this good stuff. I've got another one that's been 2 years. So, I mean, limiting a buyer, then the answer from the state is always the answer from the board is we can always draft another buyer. So every 3 months I have to go through this.
Yeah, it has to be a new contract every 3
height
months.
of stupidity. The height of stupidity. So
Yeah.
listing agreements can be up to 2 years now, but buyer brokerage contracts are limited to 3 months. And if it's 3 months and 1 day, if it's 91 days, invalid.
Honestly, I think that is one example of over responding to the NAR
Overreach.
settlement because they were worried about it being it's the buyer representation, which was the issue there,
Yep.
not the agency for the
Yep.
seller. So I think they've gone too far the other way. I don't think that's reasonable for if it's a regular buyer. I think you're still going to be pushing it a little bit on the timing. But if like you're saying, if you are a realtor and they should be working with clients, providing them with referrals to get credit repaired or to get past other obstacles, and being a provider of information and helping, it's definitely going to take longer than that, guaranteed.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's going to
Well,
help.
they're also assuming that any house you show them is going to be sold within 90 days. That's not true. Their houses sit on the market longer than that. If they're overpriced, they're certainly going to sit on the market. So so here's a scenario. Let's say that you show somebody a client, the house is listed at $900,000 and they don't want to buy it. Your buyer brokerage contract runs out, and then 95 days later, they drop the price from $900,000 to $800,000. And now that buyer you showed it to is, at $800,000, I'll definitely buy that house. But as the realtor, even though I got him in position, or the realtor got him in position, the realtor showed him the house, the realtor introduced him to it, realtor set up a program in the MLS to watch the house in case they do lower the price. Yet that realtor can no longer get paid.
Well,
It's
I
wrong.
would have to take a look
Unless
at that.
they re-up the
To be honest with you,
contract.
I would have to look it up. At least in the traditional contracts, you could exempt certain properties that had been shown
Shown.
previously.
Yeah, previously. Yeah.
So there's a possibility for that.
But that client would have to
practically
choose to
speaking,
exempt that with the next agent they sign up with. And they're
Yeah.
not going to do that.
generally no.
And you lose a lot of your procuring cause argument because you've limited your contract to 90 days. Because
Yeah.
you have to.
Yeah,
That
that's
height
in the
of stupidity.
contract. That's the
Of
maximum.
all the stuff that we've seen, of all the new laws that have come down, that 90-day limit for the buyer broker contracts, I think, is the dumbest and the most corrosive and the one that's going to cause the most trouble.
That's definitely high
mean,
on the list.
As you said, when these laws first started, the settlement and the new laws that came out, because every time you guys listening, every time one of these comes out, I react as a realtor. Oh my God, it's gotten harder. Oh my God, they're crazy doing the wrong thing. Jane's reaction is as an attorney, which is, oh good, guaranteed jobs for me, because there will definitely be lawsuits over that 3-month nonsense. I promise you, before the end of this year, there will be dozens and dozens of lawsuits about I'm procuring cause, no, I'm procuring cause. It'll be that. So being married to a real estate attorney, it's fine for us.
Well, I will say, I definitely think a lot of this is full-time attorney employment, essentially.
Oh, for sure.
However, you should be looking for an attorney who isn't looking to go to court over things. You should
Sure.
be looking for an attorney who is spending their time trying to give you advice and help keep you out of court. This isn't about winning a case. It's about getting good information from a professional source.
Well, it's what's best for the client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we focus on. So
Yeah, I know. I wish you'd be a little bit more mercenary. I'd like to buy a boat. Oh, well, I'll have to go boatless, and Jane will have to just continue to be honest. Okay, let's move on a little bit. Enough with buyer broker agreements. Is there a new law regarding gas appliances, and is there a new disclosure? I strangely got that from a couple of people, so I had to go look that one up.
Well, that's because there is a new law that's come out, but it doesn't go into effect technically until I think it's January of next year. I think it initially was supposed to be this year and got pushed off maybe, but I may be wrong about that one. But essentially it's going to be a disclosure about gas appliances because they do want people to be phasing those out over time. It's really just something to be aware of that's out there, so make sure that you find out what the current status of the laws are, because gas appliances are the new earthquake disclosure, water heater strapping, or it's these other things that are making their way into a typical transaction.
Well, I'm a fan of gas appliances. I think most people are in this part of the world because that's kind of the standard. But when you find out more about them, they're incredibly inefficient.
Yeah.
They tend to leak gas even though they're not necessarily leaking gas. Not at dangerous levels, but they're just not efficient.
Yeah, I was skeptical of the complaints initially, but there is something there.
Even the best, even a really nice gas stove is still not as efficient as an electric one. And when you talk about induction heating and things like that, where it's instant,
if I'm remodeling, I'm putting in an induction stove
sure,
myself.
Sure.
So
yes, there is a new disclosure that you have to do, letting people know if you have gas appliances. It's again the state's way of trying to get us to get away from gas appliances, but you don't have to disclose anything yet. We haven't even seen the disclosures yet. I think until next year.
Yeah, they don't go into effect. I think they might have come out, some of them already. I don't know if they're in final version, though.
Yeah, there's some stuff in the TDS about the transfer disclosure.
And CAR Legal is going to be working on making sure those are updated.
Yeah, look at that. Oh, this is the one that staff, which is mostly 22-year-old girls, thought was fantastic. Can I get my ex off the deed? If so, how?
All right, so this is going to be my public service announcement for a little minute here. To put agreements in writing, don't just buy property with somebody or put them on title, or whether it's a boyfriend or a girlfriend or frankly even a spouse, although that's obviously more complicated, or your grandmother or whoever it is, don't mess with that unless you know what you're doing. So this is definitely a case where I would talk to somebody about that first and put it in writing.
Oh, no. Let me correct you there. Not just somebody. Talk to an attorney.
Yes, sorry. Talk to a professional.
Your Uncle Clark is not the guy you want to be getting advice from on this.
That is true. I'm implying realtor or attorney, but I should
A realtor is not
clarify.
who you want to talk to about this. You want to talk to a real estate attorney. Most realtors do not have the depth of knowledge. I do because I'm married
on this
to you.
specific topic. That's true. I would say, but that's probably a good realtor should be able to refer you to somebody who, if they can't answer your question, and you're right, this is outside the purview of a typical realtor, they should be able to refer you to a real estate attorney to handle that. Yeah. But let's assume you haven't done any of that, and you've got an ex and you weren't married, so because that's obviously a separate issue with community property potentially, and that's where a family law attorney would need to come in. But let's assume it's just an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend. They have to volunteer to come off title. They have to sign a document changing title so that it comes back to you or is changed in any way. And if they don't volunteer to do it, it has to be the subject of legal action, and that has to be a lawsuit. There isn't any other way.
And that lawsuit is usually called?
Quiet title typically, yeah.
So, and it usually costs God, probably even if it's non-contested, even if they're in prison and they can't contest it or something, a quiet title action is still going to cost you what, 15,000 to 20,000 bucks?
Oh yeah, it's very hard to say.
Well, every case is different.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
and
it's not
also,
cheap.
It's also not something the court system runs to do, so it's also going to take a while.
Yeah, it's a typical
Couple of
case.
years.
It's not like an unlawful detainer or a few that are set up to be handled more quickly.
So
it'll take a couple of
you will
years.
be paying tens of thousands of dollars if you do this wrong, and it will take years of your life to get it sorted. And in that time, somebody's got to pay the mortgage payment, because the one thing that'll sort this out real quick for the bank is if they foreclose. They don't have quiet title problems. They just foreclose.
And the bank won't wait just because you say, hey, give it a minute, I need to work this out. That is not going to fly with them.
So the bottom line is, if you're going to buy a house with somebody else, put in writing what your intentions are, what their intentions are, what your responsibilities are, what their responsibilities are. Do that in writing before you buy the house.
Yep.
Title should match an agreement you already have. An agreement you have should not match title. You do it the other way around. And just, be smart about it. That's really about the best advice. Talk to an attorney if any of this stuff comes up. Have an agreement drafted between the parties. That's the way to solve all this.
Oh,
stuff.
I should mention one thing, by the way, because I do see a lot of people who maybe you're successful and the ex signs off on a quitclaim deed. You still need to you need to contact probably a title person, because there's paperwork that's going to be needed in addition to the actual document for title to be good.
Also, you can't just sign a quitclaim deed and stick it in a box and use it 5 years from now. They're only good for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
But I tell you, we got to go to break. I'm getting the sign. We got high sign to go to that. So, guys, please listen through the break. We'll do some more. I've got some really good questions for Stump the Attorney when we get back. It'll be fun. I should say ask the attorney. I shouldn't say Stump. Little Freudian slip there. So please. Yeah, of course, every day with me is a quiz show. You know that. Listen to the break. We'll come back. I'm Rich. I'm your host on the Real Estate Fix on KHTS, FM 98.1, AM 1220. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. You've reached the Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman. We're here today with my lovely wife and real estate attorney, Jane Szerman. We're asking questions of her, and she's answering them for us, which is nice. Hopefully stuff you guys can use. We're running out of show here, and we got a whole lot more questions. So if we didn't get to one of your questions and you guys had sent it in, call me after or send me an email. Jane will answer it for you, or she'll tell me and I'll answer it for you. But we'll get you an answer. But let's jump into some more of these, because we don't have a whole lot of show left to talk to. There is a bill that just passed, and I want to just jump straight into this. And I want to make sure we talk about this, because this is a big, big deal in the world of foreclosure defense. It is the biggest thing that has happened, my God, probably since the Homeowner Bill of Rights in 2008 and 10. It is a big deal. It's going to change everything. I will put it to you this way. There are people who are in trouble right now who, because of this bill, which, by the way, was sponsored by our own local assemblywoman, Pilar Schiavo. She's did a fantastic job with this. We're hoping to have her on the air actually maybe next week, the week after, talk about it. But there's a bill called AB 2424. And it is going to change everything. It is going to help keep people in their houses. So rather than me prattling on about it, you and I have been talking about it for a while, what is AB 2424?
Okay, so AB 2424 is designed to protect people who are in foreclosure, but are attempting to sell their house. It's designed to give them time, a certain minimum time, to sell the house. So if you are in foreclosure, and we talked about this, technically it doesn't, well, I shouldn't say even technically. It's not supposed to apply to a short sale, but as long as the bank is being made whole that's foreclosing, I think that's really all you need. So if the bank that's foreclosing has got a sale date set, and the owner or the realtor, I suppose, on their behalf, sends them the listing contract. There's some specific requirements. It has to be 5 business days.
You have to be in advance of 5 days of the sale.
Yeah, business days.
Business days. The sale, yeah.
Which is Monday through Saturday at least.
Yeah.
But anyway, it has to be a licensed realtor, and it has
California
to be
brokerage.
in a public,
in
listed in a public place for sale. If you do those things, the bank has to postpone the sale, the trustee sale, for 45 days. And that gives you essentially the time to get it on the market and to get it in escrow, hopefully, although timelines are taking longer these days. And then if you've done that, you can get another extension of 45 days to close the escrow. So the first is to list it, and then the second is if you have a purchase contract signed and you, again, provide that to the foreclosing bank, they are required to give you 45 days from the time you request it, not technically from the time of the sale.
So you have to be careful the day you send it in.
Yeah, they're a little tricky with that.
The bottom line, let me shortcut this. The bottom line is the foreclosure process in California is split into 2 sections. There is the notice of default, which goes 90 days. And then on the 91st day or thereafter, they file a notice of sale, which goes 21 days. And on the 21st day, they conduct the sale. So basically, worst case scenario, from the filing of a notice of default, you have 111 days. This process, and like I said, you lose 5 days coming and going, so it's not quite 90 days. But this process gives you an extra 80 days So
Yeah.
our 111 day time frame that we've been fighting against now jumps out to 191 days.
It's a big help. I'm very surprised it wasn't
So
made more public
yeah,
by
shocking
CAR
remorse,
and
but
others.
that's what well.
We're trying to get everybody to know about
I
it
know
now.
a guy who's got a radio show. You want to talk about that. But I mean, it's literally the difference between 111 days and 191 days.
Yeah, big
and
difference.
That's huge. That is huge. I'll also point out one other thing. I want to make sure Jane takes credit for this. We were talking about this morning because CAR did a really good breakdown on this. They finally got to it last week, which is good. And they said on there, it doesn't apply to short sales. And that's been bugging you, I could tell, because I know why it doesn't apply to short sales, because the first isn't made whole.
Yeah.
So last night we discussed this, and I took the position of a CR, which is why this is why. And you didn't say much about it at the time. And then this morning, you came up with, it does apply to short sales, because there are short sales where it's a second or third or a junior lien that's taken a hit, and the first is being made whole. So it is not accurate. God bless the people at CAR. They do a great job, but they missed this one. It is not accurate to say it doesn't apply to short sales in general. It is only accurate to say that it does apply to any time the foreclosing entity, usually a first mortgage, is being made whole. So if they're going to get all of their money out of the deal and the short sale applies to a junior, in other words, you're not paying off a junior lien holder and that's what's making a short sale, still works.
Yeah, I think even technically it doesn't say it doesn't apply if they're not being made whole, but that is the logical interpretation, because otherwise they're not required to participate in the sale.
Maybe if Pilar, if we're lucky enough to get Pilar to come on. I hope I'm pronouncing your first name right. I hope I'm doing that right. If I am, I hope so. And if she's good enough to come on, which I really hope she will, to talk about AB 2424, I'll ask her. She wrote the bill. She should know.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about it. I can tell in the bill where they limited what you can get out of it, but what we got was definitely an improvement.
Okay, also one other change. I want to use two more of these, but let's get to my two favorites. This is from, you know who this is from. Can my landlord prevent me from putting in her case she said cross, but religious icon on my front door?
No, your landlord cannot prevent you from representing your interests in any religious way. You can
what if it's a 6-foot-high neon cross and she wants to drill it into the front door?
Well, that would be potentially damage to the property that might require her permission, and you might be violating ordinances or statutes about the neon sign. So those are separate issues.
Religiously speaking, have a good time. Practically speaking, talk to your landlord, please, and check out local ordinances before you do that. They didn't mean, the change in the law was so you could express your religion, not so you could put a 6.5-foot neon cross on your front door. Not denigrating your religion, denigrating your choice of crosses. Anyway, okay, one more. We'll sneak in one more, and this is my absolute favorite. You know who this came from as well. Can my neighbor throw dog poop in my yard? What do I do if they do?
No.
You got 1 minute.
They can't do that. Nobody can do that. If the neighbor or no, they are causing a nuisance on your property. So you can tell them to stop, but I think it's a petty crime, but it's a crime, and you can certainly sue them for the cost of cleanup. Yeah, the police.
You can also do what I did some years ago when we had this happen. I made little flags with the neighbor's name on it, and I stuck it in little things of poop on my front yard, and that kind of put an end to it. I guess having their name on a flag and dog poop was enough to get them to stop. So anyway, so if you have any other questions, we got a whole bunch of them we're going to get to today, but if you have any other questions, please feel free to give me a call. I'll pass it along to Jane. You can call me or email me. You can reach me on my cell 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 661-714-1400. That number again is 661-714-1400. Please give me a call. If I don't answer, you can text. I'll be happy to answer for you. Any questions coming this way? You've been listening to The Real Estate Fix. I'm your host, Rich Szerman. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great week. Be good humans, and thank you.